welcome to our Great Resignation conversation. And how is it really for you? We're excited because we know there's always different ways to look at everything when things seem to be falling apart and not going the way we want it as a business owner, a leader, an employee. And it's all really about perspective. So we're going to look at really where are we and get some learning together. And we, at the end, we'll have time to have a little discussion or questions and asked and answered. So just appreciate you for being here. Hey, Maury.
Hi.
Hi. This is my sweet, wonderful, amazing assistant, Elizabeth.
Hi.
Hi. Do you want to share statistics? Or where do you want to start?
Hold on. We have some more people. Hang on one second. Let's get Sharon in here. Okay, well, for everyone here, hello, welcome to our webinar, the first of many that we'll be hosting, discussing culture change, the Great Resignation. I'm Elizabeth. For those who don't know me, I am Deborah's executive assistant, project manager, her right-hand gal. I'm excited to be here. We're super excited. We've been working on this, kind of pouring our hearts and souls into it. And I know Deborah's pumped to talk to you guys. Before we dive in, a few notes that I just want to let you know. There will be a recorded version of this at the end. We kindly also ask you to stay. There will be like a 5 to 10 minute segment for questions. You will have the opportunity to schedule a meeting with her, email, call, all that will be at the end. We'll have a slide for you. Let's see. I'm going to read a little bit about Deborah. So you guys know her, love her, but just a little bit more details. Deborah's genius is creating a clear vision for CEOs and their teams, making that vision a reality. With decades of C-level executive and team coaching, Deborah challenges leaders by inviting them to create a collaborative, vibrant, responsible, and joy-filled culture, which fosters highly desirable results. Her practice is shared in a diverse range of industries: high tech, wealth management, engineering, healthcare, marketing, and more. Yay, Deborah, we love you.
Thank you.
I'm going to start today. I want to give you a little prompt. So Harvard Business Review, which we know and love. Let me get some more people in here.
I let a few of them in. I'm helping you
Yay.
out.
All right. So for anyone who's doubted this, the data's in. The Great Resignation is real and it's happening. The U.S. Department of Labor reports that during the months of April, May, and June of 2021, a total of 11.5 million workers quit their jobs. And it's not over. According to Gallup research, 48% of employees are actively looking to make a change. Nearly 1.4 will do this in the next 6 months. Deborah, why don't you talk a little bit about these numbers, because they're pretty catastrophic, and what we can do about this.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing we can do is get our learnings, because basically when something happens that we don't want to have happen, we panic and we want to blame. So my work is about taking radical responsibility in getting the opportunity to learn how did this happen? How did we get here? And so I just want to say, if we were to go and just look at our lives, all of us, most of us went to school and we started at a young age. And this is just my philosophy. And when we went off to school, we had amazing teachers, but we weren't really asked, what do we want to do? Who do we want to become? We were basically told what to do, how to do it, when to do it, how to get from first grade, how to get to 12th grade, how to get to college, how to move from X, Y, and Z. And that continued on, right? How to work for a boss, how to climb up a ladder, and we've created a culture of succeeding. We've created a culture, America's known for winning. We are winners, right? That's what we're about. We don't fail. However, what we have lost along the journey for all of us is really fulfillment, and who are we called to be? Many of us, I know, like Maury and a few other people, have had the opportunity to look at, like, where do I shine? What do I love doing? But most of us haven't, and we've become attached to the outside of us. How much we have, how do we get more, the meaning that we make up around money, how much I have around that. And we attach to these stories that we aren't even aware of, and we start to believe them. And we haven't checked in for ourselves around, how do I feel when I believe this? We become reactive to our thinking and aren't even really aware of it. So I want to talk a little bit more about that, around what is well-being. because we know that we're in a crisis right now of talent. We're in a crisis of mental health across the board, whether you're at school. 12 to 32-year-olds is the highest death right now is 12 to 32-year-olds who are, it's not an accident, but they're committing suicide. Now, so we want to look at like, what are we telling our kids and how is this happening at school? And how is this perpetuating into the work world, right? And some of us have just gone along and believed it, and we keep passing this down. And it's creating lack of well-being for our children. It's creating lack of well-being for ourselves and for our teammates and for our culture. Our cultures are kind of toxic. And you can kind of feel that, right? How does that happen? What is culture? How do we create that? So we want to talk a little bit about how does culture occur? How do we create that? And well-being is really, I'm going to give you some tools on how you can create well-being inside of yourself. Because we want to have well-being cultures, but what does that really mean? So when we talk about mental health, being a coach, I find it really interesting when I coach people and leaders around what they're thinking. Do you know how often we even are aware of what we're thinking? And there's a reason why I'm asking. Does anyone know off the top of your head? Maybe you, if anyone, well, I guess you can't say. It's about every 4 seconds. You're unmuted. So every 4 seconds, guys, we are not knowing and we are unaware of what we're thinking. We go either into the future or the past. And when we go into the future, we become fearful because we don't know what's going to happen in the future, and we become reactive. And when we're in the past, we become attached to things that are gone, and we're resentful, or we're hanging on out of anger or frustration. So the work is to start to notice what I tell myself, those stories that are in my head, and we have 60 to 65,000 thoughts a day in them, are actually what create our feelings and create our behaviors and create our realities, create our results. So if we want to look at the results right now, because results never lie, we have a very toxic United States. We have a very toxic culture in most businesses, and our schools are toxic. Now we can blame and shame each other. We can blame and shame ourselves, or we can get curious about, how am I going to be the change agent? How am I going to change what's happening outside of me? Now, when we look at cultures in companies, typically what happens if so-and-so doesn't follow through in the sales department and their boss is mad that they didn't get whatever they're hoping to get, this new client, they blame them typically. Oh, well, you didn't do XYZ, you should have done this, right? Or like for me, I'm just going to tell you my personal, today, I was hoping to get insurance coverage for my teeth because I'm having a big teeth work next week because I hurt my mouth. Guess what? I got upset because my insurance told me today they're not going to cover it. Now, it's not that we don't get upset. It's not that we don't get fearful. It's not that we don't get frustrated. It's the noticing and paying attention as to how am I showing up when I hear this news that's outside of me? What's my responsibility, my radical responsibility to show up? Now, in cultures, we aren't taught, how do I show up? We just kind of just show up. However, radical responsibility is, what am I thinking when I hear this information? I get to choose what I want to believe. I get to choose how I feel, because actually, when we have a thought, it has an electrical current that starts to generate energy in our body. And this is science, guys. When we have this like an EEG, when we have an EEG on our brain, it's all these thoughts are coming through. And then it generates this emotion in our body. And this emotion is unconscious. And then we react and have a behavior around this feeling inside of ourselves. So to be responsible is to notice when we're reactive. We can choose if we want to just react to what's outside of us, or we can take a pause and listen to ourselves and take a few deep breaths and start to wonder, do I want to believe what's automatically popping into my 65,000 thoughts that I have in a day? And I get to choose that thought, or do I want to choose another thought? So for me, I'll just give you an example. When I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do that I'm going to have this big bill to pay next Tuesday? I thought, I can upset myself. I can upset myself. I can blame the insurance that they're bad. They should be doing this. They should be doing that. Well, how's that going to help me? How's it really going to help me? Because I can't change really the insurance. I could talk to them about it, which I did, but I can't change them. So whenever I want someone or something else to be different and try to change it by being angry or trying to control something, I suffer. And this is what causes mental wellness to suffer. This is what causes us to suffer inside, because we aren't taking control of how we want to view a certain situation. This is what creates a downward spiral and creates the cultures also to permeate. So when a leader is leading an organization and they aren't taking radical responsibility for how they want to show up, and they're blaming a situation or a person, instead of looking at how might I look at this differently and get curious around different options on how I might see the situation, it starts to become a blame culture. Right. And so my work is starting to look at how did cultures create this? How do we undo what we've done? And we start by looking at the results we have. So it's really important that we start to look at how did we create a culture, a society that's suffering right now? How did we create a culture of schools that are suffering? How did we create a pandemic of people leaving businesses right now? We can say, oh, it's their fault, or they're young, or they're a different generation, or we can say, how did I also create this? How am I a part of this? And what can I do? What's just my part that I can change? Can I get curious about how I'm a part of this? Because if I want someone else to change, in my world, there's 3 lanes: my lane, your lane, God, the universe's lane. If I start to play in my dear assistant's lane and say, well, why didn't you do this today? I asked for you to do this and I didn't, and I get upset with her and she hasn't done it. How's that going to help me in my relationship with her? But instead, she knows that I try to ask her ahead of time, hey, what do you, and this is a big key thing I think we don't do in the business world, is ask, what do you have on your plate right now? And what's your bandwidth? And also, what do you want to do today? Because a lot of times we're just viewed as taskmasters instead of human beings. What lights us up? So I even ask her, how are you doing today? Are you feeling great? Are you enjoying what you're doing?
Yeah.
Because we have the opportunity to have joy in our life, and we have the opportunity to support someone else's joy. People have feelings. Mm-hmm. So to understand that we're humans and getting back to communication with each other and asking what do people want to do and what's their bandwidth, instead of just get it done mentality to win. So I would say the winning mentality that we have is also, and I'm just as guilty as anyone else. I'm a winner, I'm an achiever, and it also took my life. It almost took my life winning, racing my bike. And I got to wake up that my life is called to a purpose. My life is called to make a difference, to be a difference. And we all have that. So I'm wanting everyone to get back to that, because until we do that, we're going to suffer inside, and we're going to create cultures that suffer. So I know I said a lot, and there's tools I can talk to you about that, but
Deborah, I'd like to pivot a little bit.
Yeah, please say.
Okay. So I really love everything you just talked about. I really want to touch on the pandemic really quick, because I feel like the mental health crisis is so real. I see it in a lot of my colleagues, my friends, just, you read it in the news, you see it on TV. The pandemic changed everything for us. It's, I hate talking about it. I think we all hate it, but it's real. We have to address it. We have to acknowledge it. Regarding the pandemic, burnout has been one of the top reasons why people are leaving their jobs. Depression, feeling of the disconnect. So the Great Resignation is kind of creating this cultural shift. People had to work from home. They had to go remote. The isolation factor. I know countless people who really struggled with this. I fortunately don't. So I feel very grateful, but I know so many people that have a really hard time being isolated and losing that socialization that they used to have in the office. That fuels their fire every day. That's causing so much anxiety and depression. And people tie success, I think, a lot of times to their ability to interact in an office setting and reaching their goals in a certain manner. When they're home and working at their kitchen island in their 500 square foot apartment, that doesn't feel fulfilling to them. That they're feeling like, what is my contribution? I don't feel successful. I'm tired. I'm lonely. Can you talk to us a little bit about your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So this goes back to knowing our thoughts that bring our feelings, that create our behaviors. And that's where we have to stay in our lane, because things are going to constantly be changing outside of us. Pandemics are going to happen, obviously, I guess. We're going to lose our keys. Our children aren't going to listen to us. We're going to get fired from a job. We might not get the raise we want. Those things we only have so much control over. But the biggest thing is, how am I going to respond to that? I have a choice to either respond a certain way, or I can be reactive and be angry and mad. And that comes from our thinking. So if I want to choose, I want to have joy in my life, which is what I do. And I'm not saying I have it all the time. I get scared, but I want to notice that I'm scared. I want to feel my feelings all the way through, which is emotional intelligence, and learn from that. And then can I get to the thinking of myself is, what is a kinder thought around this situation? Can I get curious about maybe why I didn't get a raise? Can I get curious around that? What is my learning here? Instead of blaming my boss, oh, well, they should have just paid me, right? Because that's typically what happens. Or, hey, I got sick from the pandemic. Now there's always learning. I haven't been sick, thank God. But it doesn't mean I won't be. So I just do my best to not be sick, wash my hands, like keep my mask on, even still do those things that we all should do. But if I were to get sick, I could blame myself or blame someone else, or I could look at what is. And when we argue with what is, right, this is where we suffer. Because the ego, the amygdala, the fearful brain always wants to argue with what is. Something is wrong, you're wrong, the situation's wrong. And so when we start to notice that fearful mind of ours that runs our life, if we're not aware, it's going to wreak havoc on it. And so my toss is, how can things be for us? It sounds crazy, but how can this pandemic be for us? How can this great resignation be for us? How can the opposite of what our fearful mind tell us, oh no, we better do something? Well, how could it be for us that we might get to know the people that are working in our businesses that are still there? How can we get to know them as a human being? How is it our wake-up call to say, wait a minute, this isn't just a worker. This is someone who has feelings, thoughts, who has needs and desires. I might never even ask them. I might never have asked them, what do you want to create? How do you want to grow? What do you want to do in a year from now? Where do you want to be in 3 years from now? Can I support you in that? How can I support you in that? So I think it's a wake-up call to slow down and look at how status quo and the way we've done, I don't know how many decades we've been running this racket around school, success, winning. It's not working anymore. And we've got to look at the result. We've got to make a change. Each of us is responsible to start to look at, how can I think differently about this? Does that answer your question?
Love that. I love that. Deborah, talk to us a little bit about the conscious leadership. You talk a lot about how a conscious leader now more than ever needs to look at this great resignation as a turning point for recreation, personal development, leadership growth, team growth, fresh perspectives that we've really never had to do before, on a corporate level, private level, really across the board.
Yes.
How are conscious leaders supposed to move forward?
Perfect. So leadership in my world is how you lead your life, how you show up with the people in your life, whether it's your family, whether it's your team, whether it's your boss, or you are the boss. It's, how are you showing up? Am I showing up curious? Am I showing up willing to learn? Am I showing up ready to hear someone? Or am I right? Am I right that this has to happen and it better happen by then? And I don't care what you have to do. And you just got to stay until it gets done. Right? So looking at a curious conscious leader looks at, which is our normal behavior. Most of us want to look at, there's something wrong and I got to fix it, or they need to be fixed, or I'm wrong and I better fix myself. A conscious leader starts to look at, like, what if it's just the way it should be? And that person's just the way they should be. And maybe I didn't get the results I want. And where was I unconscious in my thinking when I made the decision to do X, Y, Z? Because when we are unconscious and we make decisions unconsciously, we're always going to fall short of what we want, because the small part of our brain is going to be driving us, the one that wants to keep us safe, And it's impossible to get the results we want because the fearful part of us is driving. It's impossible. So if a curious conscious leader is at play, he's going to wonder, or she's going to wonder, where was I unconscious in making my decisions? And how might I think and look at things differently to make a different decision? Usually when we're right, there's only one answer. And we know that we're unconscious. That's the fearful mind trying to protect ourselves, trying to protect the situation. So if we're not wanting to be right, we want to ask ourselves, what are all the possibilities instead of just one answer? Tell me, dear team member, tell me your perspective. Tell me your perspective. I want to hear as many perspectives as possible. And could there be something even greater than my perspective? So a conscious leader notices that they don't want to be right. They want to be open and curious.
In your coaching with your leaders, you often tell them that your work as a leader is to take time to acknowledge your vision and why you are doing what you're doing. If it's not what you love, the most important work as a leader and for your culture is to make the shift to wonder what it would be like to combine what you do with what you love most of your days and to raise up your people to do the same. How can leaders transfer that to their people? How can we have that, start that kind of cultural conversation to make a change, to shift?
I love that. So first of all, I think that I would love for each leader to ask themselves that first. Because the most successful millionaire CEOs that I coach have never asked themselves that question because they've been running this racket their entire life because they've been told since they were young, this is success. But success without fulfillment, right, is failure. I think that's Tony Robbins. So success without having fulfillment in our life is a never-ending grind. And there's always going to be something missing. So I really ask, culture is going to change when each leader is looking at, am I doing what I most love? Is my work easeful? Is it fun? Am I creative? Am I growing as a leader? And until that happens and they demonstrate that that's the way they want to build their culture, then they can invite their other people. And once they know, which I call genius, we want to step into our genius, our purpose. We could do it forever without getting paid. And the ego is like, whoa, how is that really going to happen? But it really can, because I do that for my life. And that's how I raise up leaders to do that. Once a leader is living in their purpose and calling, they have the bandwidth and the joy to look at what lights up their people. And they can even notice for them, hey, when you do this, I notice you really love it and you seem to do it easily and you, right? Instead of hiring just for roles and tasks to be filled, why aren't we asking, what do you most love to do? What do you see yourself doing? And if we don't have that, how might it be, but how could we even create a position for you that might benefit everyone? And how could we go beyond what we think we should be doing?
Deborah, talk a little bit about your AIM tool. So attention, internal dialogue, and then movement of your body and how we can use that for success.
Yeah, so AIM is an acronym for A is attention. What we put attention on is what we focus on, and it's what we create. And so since we're mostly unaware, we're unconscious, most 96 to 98% of the time, we're creating things we typically don't want because we're targeting on something that's going to be our safety zone. So it's being aware of, what do I want, setting yourself in the morning. What do I want to put my attention to today? How do I want to feel? What do I want to create if I want to feel joy today? What do I want to be doing? And then I is for internal dialogue. What am I telling myself? We have tons of stories, which we use, I said before, sentences, things that we tell ourselves that are running through our mind constantly. So when this right here means nothing. This is just a piece of glass that is a drinking glass, right? But until I put meaning to it, it doesn't really mean anything. I could say, oh, well, it's got my fingerprints all over it and it looks kind of icky because my fingerprints are all over it. That's a story. It puts meaning to this look of glass. Or I can be like, oh, it's beautiful the way the sun's shining through it. And it's kind of, the little crystals are coming out of the little circles, right? So we have a different perspective on the meaning we put to something. So that's our I, internal dialogue. And that's a radically responsible leader looks at what is my internal dialogue that I'm telling myself. And then M is movement. So our bodies like to move and we sit still a lot, especially now in the pandemic, right? We get stuck and so movement, actually, if we feel sad or we feel overwhelmed or we feel stuck, one really great thing is get up and move your body, go to a different place in your office, go for a walk, get up to move your body because there's energy that actually flows through your body when you're moving. And when you move, you usually feel better. You usually feel better when you're in motion versus just sitting in one place the whole time. So movement also, if you want to feel a certain way, you can decide, how can I move my body? If I want to feel joy and I want to have peace today, how do I want to position my body to have that? Well, for me, that means sit up straight. That means smile. That means walk lightly instead of stomping around. I get to choose how I want to actually move my body. So we can go deeper around this, but that's the basic gist of AIM.
Yay. Deborah, we have a little bit more time left before we open up for questions. I want you to touch a little bit on conscious leaders igniting teams out of passion versus out of fear and how that plays into the conversation.
Yeah, thank you. So as I know it, and I worked for corporate America, I've worked for entrepreneurs, I've worked for myself. I know when I'm motivated, right? I know when I'm even motivating myself by fear and anxiety. And I know when I'm motivated by joy and curiosity and fun, right? Creativity. So it's not that we will be in joy all the time. It's to notice that we're not. And how do I shift out of it? So we can motivate our people by external things, more money, vacations, give them a tool to go, or a gift certificate to go have dinner. Those are externals. Those are not going to change people. They're nice, right? But really what's going to motivate and change the way we do things with teams is getting to know the humanness of them. For them, letting them know it's safe to show up, to be just how they are. They might be sad that day, or they might be having some anxiety, and a safe place to have a conversation around what's their thinking that's bringing that anxiety, what's their thinking that's bringing that sadness, and a safe confidential place where they can just share and talk with maybe their leader or one of their teammates, that it's okay to bring your emotions, right? Emotional intelligence, Dan Goleman. If you haven't read any Dan Goleman work from the 80s at Harvard, who I've studied with this past year, read about emotional intelligence, because there's so much wisdom, and we must allow ourselves to show up who we are wherever we are, especially at work. But we try to hide things. Again, we have stories about how we should look at work, what we should be doing at work. Those are all stories. I don't know who started that, but someone's believed it, and we've all believed it. But how's that not serving us anymore? So how do we start to have different ways of being together and build families of trust, love, collaboration, connection, versus robots? And this is the way, what's right and what's wrong. You should look this way at work, or you shouldn't look this way at work. You shouldn't tell someone this at work, or you should tell someone this at work. You shouldn't cry at work, right? I've heard that before. Oh, emotions aren't allowed at work. Well, what kind of nonsense is that? I'm sorry. Who came up with that one? Right? Because we're emotional beings. So yeah. So there's intrinsic motivation by allowing someone to grow, and can we support them in their growth? Can we give them coaching? Do they want coaching? How do they want to develop? Ask them, how do you want to develop as a person, as a leader, in your job, in your role, or even beyond that?
Excellent. All right, we're getting close. Would you like to open it up for some conversation? Let's have some questions.
Yeah, does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, let me get everybody off of the mute.
Talking too much.
No, you're okay.
I everyone's off.
Everyone's unmuting.
Does anyone have any questions, thoughts, concerns? Anything I say that you're like, what are you talking about?
Well, Deborah, I applaud you. The fact that you're wanting to make leaders and decision makers understand this philosophy of openness to create an atmosphere where employees can respond not only emotionally and intelligently is terribly important. And I think that's one of the things that most organizations miss. They miss the fact that unless the leaders provide an atmosphere that allows employee participation and allows the thinking that maybe hasn't taken place and the participation that hasn't taken place to be part of the environment, we stand a chance of making companies empty as we go forward. The resignations and the changes of people moving away from the companies that they're at indicates that something's missing. And it's important to know that that's not normally money, which in the past has been the major reason for people making changes. Right. So if we can open the minds of our leaders, our company presidents, owners, to the fact that they really have individuals working for them. And these individuals have thoughts and concerns and desires and needs. And if they don't open themselves up to know what those are, there is no chance that they're going to survive in the world that's coming or the world that's now here. So I applaud the direction and the aim that you're making part of your life's work.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I just want to add too, thank you, Maury, I love you. So the thing too around that is also employees need to know too, that their happiness isn't going to come from even just their boss changing. That they must also be the source of, if I'm going to choose to be joyful and I want to stand for that in my life with my team, with my boss, no matter how they're being, how am I going to show up? Because just changing your role or going to a different company, that's an external and that's temporary. And something's going to go wrong there. And then it's going to be like, I'm going to go to another job or I'm going to go to another company, whatever it is. So we all have responsibility, each and all of us. It's on all of us to take radical responsibility as to how am I going to show up in this world? I get to choose. And either I'm going to be with a group of choosers or I'm going to be with a group of blamers. And I get to choose that, right? And hopefully I'm hoping that people don't change, unfortunately. People have a vision to have a great culture, but most don't. But what is change? Change happens when there's enough suffering. And so maybe we've had enough suffering where people are going to start to get curious to be like, is there another way? But typically our humanness, we have to get a lot of suffering before we're really, really willing to make a change. So is it enough? I don't know. For me, it was enough. I almost died, right? So businesses might have to die for change to happen. That might happen. It is happening. It might have to happen, right? But we're all in this together. And what we have to decide is, how am I going to love myself? How am I going to love my neighbor? How am I going to love the world? Because that's my responsibility. If I'm going to be kind and loving, that's my responsibility. No matter how anyone else is. 3 lanes in the world. Again, my lane, your lane, God, the universe's lane. My responsibility is how I'm going to show up in my lane. However someone else wants to show up, that's their decision. I can't change them. I must accept them, but I don't have to agree with them, right? And I can't change what's bigger than me, but I can join how I want to join in that bigger than me part. I decide how I want that to be. That's the only thing I can change is me. So we all need to come to that. Any other thoughts, questions?
Yeah, I have one. Thank you also, Deborah, for the work you're doing. And so my question is, as somebody for a leader that is highly sensitive and empathetic of their people and cares about them, balancing that with the fact that the organization there is work that has to get done, right? And so just the needs in balancing, I don't know, sometimes it feels almost like a reconciliation between, it's like I hear what somebody wants and then evaluating against the needs of the organization. And those do not have to be mutually exclusive. It's just any
So
thoughts or experience you have around.
Yes, so
that.
this is the fearful thought that that a leader has. Well, how can this really happen if things have to get done? It's a fear thought, right? So let's just acknowledge that this is a fear thought. And yes, of course we want things to get done, but it's how do we get them done? Am I going to do it because I have to get it done and I better hurry? Or if I don't, so-and-so is going to be mad at me, or I'm going to blame myself, or it could be, so there's a very different way of doing it. It could be a toxic fear drive, right? I have to, I should, or it can be like, okay, I know I have this to do today. When's the best opportunity for me to do that? When am I most vibrant about doing this? When is the friendliest for my brain to think about achieving this? What agreement have I made with Megan around this? I've already made this agreement. When will I have the space to do this? Instead of, what happens is we pile on, and we're overloaded because we think as leaders and even workers that we have to do it. There's no, we're not used to saying no. And so we're under this heap. And so it's like, so really learning to, where am I making my yes to do something from? Do I even first have a whole yes to doing it? And what agreement do I have with the person I'm making, whether it's with you or someone else? Because obviously things have to get done, but how am I doing it from? Am I doing it from reactivity, or am I doing it from a thoughtful, responsive, planful, kind way? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I know it's vague, but there's ways this is how we change culture, actually, is how we make agreements. And noticing for ourselves, where am I making this from? And a lot of times leaders are like, you have to get this done now, because they're scared. It might not really have to be done for another 3 weeks, but because they're fearful, they're thinking it needs to be done right now. And because when we're fearful, we can't see beyond right now. We only see right now. So each of us are responsible. Where am I making my requests from? Where am I making my requests from? Is it curiosity and trust with my partner, my coworker, my teammate, or is it out of anxiety and it has to get done because I'm right? If this doesn't happen, all hell is going to break loose, right? The fearful part of us. And it might be that it has to be done.
Yeah.
It's all learning. It's all learning, guys, because most of the time we're all going to be making decisions from fear, because that's how we're all wired. This is a biological wiring. It's a conscious leader notices the biological wiring is driving us, and they choose to get out of the wiring. And that's the work I do, is giving people the tools to get out of the automatic biological wiring of fear. Were you going to say something, Elizabeth? What time are we at?
We have about 5 minutes.
Okay.
So if you have any closing thoughts, or if anybody else has a question.
Thank you, Megan. So if you guys are concerned about culture and leadership, or you work for a culture that might be open and curious to, how do I build a curious culture, an engaging culture, a trusting culture, a kind culture, reach out to me, because I am you're going to give us a way for people to sign up for 30 minutes.
Yes.
If you want to have a culture assessment, we got to look at what's really here, because if we pretend everything's okay and it's not, we're not really going to get our learnings. And sometimes we don't want to look because it's scary to look at really what is our culture like, but let's look and see, because if we see what is, and we move into, what can we learn from this? The world's our oyster. But if we try and cover it up and blame and shame, oh, well, it's this way because so-and-so, we're never going to change. So let's get curious and let's look at what's really here in your organizations, in your cultures.
Can everybody see this? I think so.
I can see it.
Okay, this is just our little slide at the end, our little contact slide for your reference.
So Deborah,
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to make a suggestion to the group, and that is, I know that each of us are thinking about this for our own world and the people that we know. But I like to think that every meeting has an opportunity for each of us. And I think part of that meeting is getting to know the other people that are involved. I think that's very important. I also think that we should each be thinking about other people who might want to hear about Deborah, and think about those people who you feel it would be a plus to meet Deborah and make those connections. You know, my particular business is about making introductions between presidents and owners, but each of us has a responsibility, if we believe and understand what we've just heard, to think about the leaders that we know who might think this is very important to understand, and who want to meet Deborah and make those introductions. So it's just not for us, it's for the people we know, and we can continue this effort by making those introductions. So I'm not sure, Deborah, you have a paragraph that everybody has about what you're doing, but I think you should share that with everybody at this meeting, and they should think about who else might like to hear this message.
Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. Because we can go further together than apart. So absolutely, we need each other. So thank you for that, Maury. Absolutely true. Thank you.
Anybody
Deborah.
else?
Real quick, I'll tell everybody that Deborah and I have been working together for about 1.5 years, and I have just had the opportunity to share briefly some of this fantastic information with an organization, and within days, they are different. They're connecting on a different level. They feel valued. It's really fascinating, rewarding, hard work, but it's beautiful.
Thank you. Okay, guys, appreciate you. Reach out, call, email. Let's do this together. If you have any questions outside of this too, that I can be a support, reach out here for you and your growth, your journey, what you most want to create for your life and work and the people in it. Just appreciate you for being here, taking the time to be here. So appreciate you. Thanks all.